Gathering around the life divine, we are again. For a few weeks, we were talking about the nature of being. And while we seem to be leaving the subject tonight, you can never leave the subject of being. We will always be working in that. But we thought to move towards how this world comes into shape, into form. What informs it? And so to manifest, to go back into the briefest history of philosophy, we note that essence, essentia, from esse to be in Latin, refers to the essence of what a thing is beyond all categories of development or experience, that from which existence comes, that from which existence emerges. So first an essence, and then an existence. Again, from Latin, all these terms will be from Latin. Ex, ex, and sistere, which means to step forth, to emerge. So clearly, existence depends upon what is essential, draws from what is essential to, in a sense, stand out. Our term manifest, manifestare, manifestus, from late Middle English usage, means to make clear, to reveal something about the nature of existence, which itself depends upon essence of being. But it's still richer than that, because if there's going to be a development of existence, it must be doing something. So there is the idea of an involution. In, and volvere means to roll in or enwrap spirally. So it's coiled around. So this is the idea that leaving essence, coming into being, existence coils itself around in an involution. And from Plato onwards, this is a downward push. But involution isn't the end of the story, as you well know. Whatever is develops, moves, dynamizes. So we have evolution. Again, Latin, e, and volere, to roll out. So what has been involved must necessarily come rolling out. So this is the primary problem of philosophy, and it brings us into so many other sectors that you will realize what they are without me having to mention them, else we'll be here all night. Let's begin with the one and the many. Parmenides and the problem in early Greek thought. If there is one reality, how can there be many? Perhaps they don't really exist. Perhaps only the one is permanent. Reality must be permanent, cannot change. Therefore, all things which are transient are in a sense unreal. This is an idea that we, of course, can see possibly migrated from the East, from India, into ancient Greece. But this idea of permanence and change, and that problem occupies all the all the Greek thinkers, including Plato and Aristotle, until we arrive at Neoplatonism. And in Vedanta, born in India, we get the affirmation that Brahman is first a dynamic being, not a static absolute, devoid of contact with the universe, but is that which grows, that which creates, and creates through the power of the word. In the Veda, the Rig Veda, the word sparks the universe into movement. Of course, we see this in Christianity. We see this in Judaism also. This idea that the word has a unique power, a power of formation, and what it names becomes real. But if Brahman moves, and indeed the universe of phenomena results, it is Sankhya, still later, but not that much later, that describes the process by which the play of nature moves forward. We won't address that tonight. I can see an expression of relief on all your faces. But this idea that there is a reality, a manifestation, a making clear, a coming forward to the front so that it's visible as the appearance of a cosmos through the process of involution, whether it's Platonic, Neoplatonic, or Vedantic, this for Sri Aurobindo is a truth, experienceable, not simply something we posit logically or metaphysically. This is something that we can enter into through our own deepening psychological experience. So, what we must do is disclose in ourselves the secret chambers hidden within nature and within our own being. And that is evolution. It is a conscious revealing. This idea of emerging stadia of existence does not originate with Sri Aurobindo. Alexander and Spencer before him spoke and wrote about these things, but it's Sri Aurobindo that gave it a definite form in spiritual philosophy. So these powers that are concealed in nature as it moves within the context, the living essence too, is a set of realities. Real powers are there. It is our destiny, Sri Aurobindo says, towards the end of the life divine, to, through the process of evolution, psychological growth, to recover, not simply discover, but to recover our true self and its powers in the flow of cosmic time. So we take it then that there is an unknowable, an essence which is beyond our capacity to describe. But of itself, it moves into being, fashions a cosmos wherein it dwells, but secretly, and not simply in one homogenized movement, but through this process of involution, establishes grades and schemes of itself within each grade. we've looked at the ontological plan that the Taittiriya Upanishad offered us. And so we know that to our experience, the first thing that we can come into contact with and understand as the base of reality is matter. And then we discover that life might be the answer. And then that mind might be the answer. And then that there is a great consciousness beyond mind. But even beyond that great consciousness is an ebullience of divinity that can only be described as Ananda, that which is the supreme pleasure, not mere pleasure, but something that that one experiences. And that is the very fount of all the rest. So if it were like a waterfall, various levels of it, coming from that bliss, pouring out would create a vast consciousness, a real consciousness. From that would emerge mind, from mind life, from life matter, and all the way down. This secret reality of bliss pervades, permeates, and establishes all grades of being. All are real. All are enclosed inside of matter, and each opens a stage at a time. So that's the scheme there. In the Katha Upanishad, we hear, and this is a quote from Sri Aurobindo's translation, high beyond the intelligence, the mind, is the great self, Mahas, the vast, what Sri Aurobindo will later call the supramental. High beyond the intelligence is the great self. Beyond the great self is the unmanifest Avyakta. So that essence which is unnameable, which is beyond the polarities of being and non-being. Then the passage says, beyond the unmanifest is the conscious being, the Purusha. There is nothing, says the Katha Upanishad, beyond the being, that person. That is the extreme ultimate, that the supreme goal. Now, there's a close connection between some of the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita. Shvetashvatra, obviously, but also the Katha here. This idea that beyond and unmanifest, what we could call in the ordinary Vedantic sense, the Atman or Brahman, is another, a conscious person who includes all of this within, you might say, the confines of his own being. We know he's not boundaried by anything. We know he's not limitable, but still, the Upanishad and Sri Aurobindo call it a person. So we're back to the Bhagavad Gita, because in the Gita, the final secret is the disclosure that it is possible for the seeker, for Arjuna in that case, to rise into active, loving, and knowing communion with the Supreme Person, rise not simply free into the Akshara Purusha status, but beyond that into the Purushottama status, and there reside in a kind of permanence, unshakably united with that Supreme Being. So this great self again, that's the supramental, the key to creation, the key to cosmic definition. From that great person, though, then from that supreme, both expressed and unexpressed being come. Thus, for being and non-being. If there is a resolution, It is in that experience. That is the culminating point for the evolving soul, which through long processes of cosmic time, we can reach. Because all that is in that is in us. That same essence, that same presence of divinity. So, if we have these two poles of being, the spirit above and matter below, it is the intent, not an accident, the intent of pure spirit to manifest in us its absolute freedom. And the claim of universal matter to be the mold and condition of our manifestation. That's a beautiful sentence. Sri Aurobindo wrote it. So the freedom of the spirit to come into us here, and by rights, the promise made to matter that it can return and be the condition of the divine manifestation. It agrees, matter does, to be the house into which this presence will be poured if it gets to participate. So it isn't the renunciation of the physical, of matter, of life, or of mind living in matter that is our goal. Really, what we're looking for is participation, full and complete. That's bhakti. Full participation, the real share. So an intimate oneness must unite the poles. And that oneness is opened up in us when we realize, when we see, and not simply when we see, but when we have the native power that comes with true sight that can act upon the truth we see. But let's regard again that it's not an accident that the divine manifests here. As the Gita says, there is an imperative from above, a fiat, a demand, as is expressed in chapter 9, verse 8, that the Supreme Person presses down forcefully, bashat, and matches by doing that, by his pressure down, the same pressure, the upward impulse that is embedded in us now to rise up from apparent darkness and rejoin that being in light. So an intentional descent, not an accident, not a fall. This is a funny turn that Neoplatonism, that Gnostic philosophy back in the day, a couple of thousand years ago, takes in seeing this universe as a den of darkness, something we must escape, and let's go up there. Well, we have, in a sense, to go psychologically there to be free. But no, we're going to live here freely. We're going to conquer the earth for the divine and not abandon it. And we'll do it if it costs us our death, won't we? So the divine universalizes and manifests all potentialities in this all. Everything that is secret in the divine is accessible here. It's true, this is a vast universe, but even being vast, it's not infinite. It's illimitable, perhaps. But at its core, back to its essence, we gain access to what it is in its infinity. We can live in infinity while remaining in time. This all conceals and reveals. The process by which it moves reveals its secrets. An evolution progressively manifests God in the body, in the advancing, the growing individual, thus uniting again all three poises of being, that essential, the transcendent, the universal, and the individual. It is the individual who must awaken to the secret within, which allows the supreme marriage between universe and divinity. It has to happen in us. So there is a truth of being, Sad Brahman, which is present here in and behind the superficies of our cosmic experience. An existence which is pure, entirely beyond our ordinary consciousness, and also beyond our normal experience, but apprehendable to our spiritual experience. Huh. And by reclaiming our destiny, we prove the value, the valorization from our growing conscious choice in alignment with divine purpose. In other words, the universe is speaking its truth through our aspiration, that we need not merely remain material, nor is life as it exists here the answer to what immortality is, nor is the division of our experience in sentience and suffering an answer to what Ananda is above, nor is our divided mind, our blocked vision, anything like the open vision of a supramental agency. All of those things can come into manifestation if we permit the universe to grow in us, if we accept the big invitation and outgrow ourselves. So there is that truth of being, Sad Brahman, but there is also its nature as Chit Shakti, conscious power, which expresses itself through knowledge, will. As Sat Chit Ananda, it is infinite, beyond any formation. But as it forms itself, its Chit Shakti aspect brings into flow the supramental consciousness, which organizes the infinity of Satchit Ananda into an ordained and beautiful harmony. That is the first manifestation, you might say, of truth of being. Satyam Ritam Brahat. What is true, what is ordered, and what is vast. That is that consciousness. So, within itself, this supramental region possesses unity and multiplicity at one and the same time. It is an unbroken, harmonious whole, where there is balance. So it is Satchit Ananda through its distributive agency, which we call the supramental, which creates and harmonizes all that obtains in that world. Now, from that supramental region comes raining down in further involution these various powers that we know that we have evolved into accessing and experiencing here. The possession of a body, the urge for a mastery of life, the rich aesthetic and intellectual treasures possible to the mind. So we gather from both our experience and our reason that the multiplicity of the supramental consciousness is an eternal fact of being of the Supreme beyond measuring time. Here it is all measured out. There it's a single moment. The past, the present, the future are all one vision to the supermind. Trikaladrishti, the three-time eye, sees it all, sees what must come into being, because as we said, universe is not an accident. The end is foreseen, or goals, let us say, because who can say if there's an end? Could be an infinite progression. But always the next step looks like deity to us. So to us, the supermind looks like God. To the life forms below us, they look up to humanity and think we're gods. This is the old perception of, I think, Samuel Alexander, an early evolutionary thinker we mentioned earlier today and other times. It's funny to think of anybody looking at us and thinking we might be gods, isn't it? We can't interview them and ask. We can offer them a treat and they'll be agreeable. Whatever you say. So, if the supramental as an aspect of the supreme beyond the cosmic registry we know is outside our experience of time. Nevertheless, we can see that it can eternally recur in universal form because that never passes away. If it asserts itself, the forms here in cosmic time and in limited materiality and obvious formative limits can express, can hold, and can be vivified by that supramental energy. And in a sense, there can be a divinity established upon earth. So this answers the question to Sri Aurobindo about whether we can bring the sense of the eternal, immortality in time, delight in the place of suffering and inconscience here into this experienceable world. He says, yes, it can be done. It can only be done yogically because yoga is the fastest way to evolve our consciousness, or that's what we mean by a rapid evolution. But the divine must help us deal with the divide, this division between our worlds of ignorance and those worlds of knowledge and beauty and bliss must come together. So what is the abrogation of this flimsy separation between being and becoming. To us, it doesn't look flimsy. To the yogic soul, it is unexistent. For the yogin, one blows right past the division and gets into the deep unity. But how do you make it real in the becoming? That is becoming aware of it when you go into a yogic exaltation and get beyond into the heights of the spirit. That releases you psychologically, inwardly, but it does not do anything much to the body, life, and mind complex left here. It doesn't answer a larger question about the connection between being and becoming, because you've returned to what is. What about that which becomes, you see? So the old argument between soul and nature isn't answered simply by us getting free from our personal limitations as described by cosmic treatise. This is our big need, our paramount need. In a sense, we can eternize our formal being by restoring to it a conscious awareness of its source. But there has to be an empowerment in that. A divine consciousness in the body is possible and in the rest of the vehicle. And having that divinized body stand for the universe also is possible. The field of manifestation is open to intervention from above. If we aspire, if we're willing to open an aperture in ourselves through which a higher consciousness can descend. Again, it requires us to evolve, to get to that point, to get to a pinnacle of what's possible in nature as it is, matter, life, mind, and then receive what would come down. The concealed potentialities can be revealed if we do that. And we've suggested last time, I think, that a slow and difficult evolution is the way that we manifest the divine's true nature and greater reality. That's the process right now. It's through struggle and slow advance. The so far slow crawl of evolution has been produced by the outer face of nature, not the inner. We haven't discovered all the secrets inside that we can bring to the front. All those treasures are hinted at. A few mystics here and there, a few yogins here and there have touched upon them, but we haven't stabilized them in the human form. But nature is stirring, even now, deep psychological powers that dwell within us. And offering to us cognitive capabilities which we can bring into manifestation, that we can make clear in our nature. And we have, again, hints of it, but they are promises or glimpses of what is to come. We haven't made them real and solid and imperishable in form here. So this is our work, in a sense, to justify the cosmos. If we did it, an ultimate result would be the vibrant presence of divine joy upon earth, a revelation of beauty, the power to speak truth, and in the speaking of it, to make it dynamic. And that demands a soul revelation within the individual first, as was described in the Taittiriya Upanishad, which we studied together. The emerging psychic being that comes through this process is anyway the real person behind all that's on our surface. We look within, the first thing we see is our desire soul, and we think that's it. I feel powerful now. I feel full of life. That's not the soul. A country does this and becomes Asuric. An individual does this and they become vitalistic. We have to dig deeper and find the soul in us, really. And that soul manifests in individuals first, but can populate a collectivity if there is a living center of awakened soulhood there. Better if there's more than one, better if there's a dynamic, controlling, harmonizing presence that, in a sense, suffuses all the community. But the awakened psychic being in an individual can replicate itself in a less stable communal form because the members of the community come and go. But at least you can capture moments and you might be able to sustain it over time. And if you were able to sustain a soulful group over time, it would have an impact on regions around. In human life, in the harmonies of nature, everything would feel it. It's up to us to make that real again. But the foundation of form, as we currently live, is shaped materially. We haven't shook free from that. Sri Aurobindo wrote, thus, not any eternal and original law of eternal and original matter, but the nature of the action of cosmic mind is the cause of atomic existence. Matter is a creation, and for its creation, the infinitesimal and extreme fragmentation of the infinite was needed as the starting point or basis. So we still have that original question posed in matter to answer. I could read a bit more directly from him. It is true that their action is concealed, and even when they emerge, it is modified by the medium, material, vital, mental, in which they work, and not easily recognizable. Supermind cannot manifest itself as the creator power in the universe from the beginning. For if it did, the ignorance and inconscience would be impossible, or else the slow evolution necessary would change into a rapid transformation scene. Yet at every step of the material energy, we can see the stamp of inevitability given by a supramental creator. In all the development of life and mind, the play of the lines of possibility, and their combination, which is the stamp of overmind intervention. As life and mind have been released in matter, so too must in their time these greater powers of the concealed Godhead emerge from the involution and their supreme light descend into us from above. So the takeaway idea there is that we did not want an instant transformation of the universe. We wanted to work through it grade by grade, experience by experience, slowly if that's what it took to get where we're going. So matter and the intervening fields and planes are justified by the self-power, the Atma Shakti of the one omnipresent reality. This is as it should be. If we lift our conscious selves to include in our awareness what we are there as well as what we are here, we'll find that the absolute, capital A, without effort, sustains both the non-manifestation and the world manifestation with the evolving individual soul placed inside and capable of union with all poises. Aware at once of transcendence, universality, and the truth at the core of the individual who is so awakening. If that is formed here, it is real in self-preparation. It is real in its self-formation. So its eventual reunion can be one. And if it moves along in the process of time, it comes blessed from a timeless reality. It is that speaking through us, that acting through us, and has not abandoned or left us alone athwart an antagonistic universe. The infinite sees the truth in us and sees the justice of our role in the world and the world's. So, back to the beginning, manifestation depends upon being, but also upon consciousness and power. The apparent oppositions of the world do not cancel or limit the integrality of reality. They finally, these oppositions, serve the course of evolution. The impediments are useful to us. We don't forget something along the way. We don't do half-finished work and go skipping along thinking all is well. We have to make it full and complete as we go. So knowledge grows towards this reconciling unity beyond, through the bewildered mind to arrive at what is beyond it. So these throes in which the mental being finds itself unable to decide, is there being, is there not being? Is there a permanent? Is everything transient? Am I good? Am I bad? None of these questions can be answered at the level of the mind. They can only be answered by the disclosure of the spiritual entity within. If there is a manifest knowable, partly manifest to our ignorance, it is wholly known to divine knowledge. And the whole trend of evolutionary nature reveals what the universe practically conceals. This relationship between concealing and revealing is part of the puzzle of the plan. Don't think about it. Lift your consciousness beyond it. That is where the answer is. In a unified consciousness above, not in the perplexities of philosophy and mental thinking. It isn't according to logic. The logic of the finite does not compete with the logic of the infinite. Hmm. So here we are, sitting encased in our human structures, bedeviled by our egos. But we have to find ourselves first as ego in vitality, in mentality, before we can reach soul status. If you don't have an ego yet, you can't outgrow it. You will have to become egoistic to be able to go through the divisions to get to the solution beyond the ego. This is why these simplistic religions, if if I agree to believe in your doctrines, will you give me salvation? Yes. Here's your passport. It solves nothing. You identify with the ignorance of the group, and there is no solution. These ego postures are our first stances in nature. But just as there is a pressure from within and a pressure from above to force us to go beyond what we've attained so far, we can expect and presume that the challenges of nature will not let us rest. They will drive us. Because until we're willing to take over the enginery of our own growth, nature will have to provoke us, will have to force us to move forward. I think I'll read a quick passage to you. I know I'm keeping you late tonight. I apologize. A manifestation of the greater powers of existence till the whole being itself is manifest in the material world in the terms of a higher, a spiritual creation may be considered as the teleology of the evolution. This teleology does not bring in any factor that does not belong to the totality. It proposes only the realization of the totality in the part. It's on page 867. I'll spare you the rest, let you go read it for yourselves. But it's explaining again, as we touched upon in earlier weeks, that the purpose of the cosmos is there, but it can't be seen on the surface. Philosophy cannot ascertain what it is. It can guess. Sri Aurobindo did not pretend to nail it down absolutely, but he had a spiritual insight which sustains those of us who find it harmonic with our natures. So we began our evening with a peace chant from the Isha Upanishad, and we return to the ideal of the soul and the cosmic cycles in siddhi, in utterest fulfillment. Sri Aurobindo wrote this: this fullness of being, fullness of consciousness, fullness of life must be the goal of development towards which we are tending and which will manifest at an early or later stage of our destiny. Purnam Madaha, Purnam Midam, Purnat Purnam Udachyate. Purnasya Purnamadaya. Purnameva Vashishyate. That is full. This is full. The full is taken out of the full. Take out the full from the full remains. So, thank you for your patience. I am going to ask you to wait a moment. Of course, you may go if you must, but I'm going to read a brief passage from Savitri. Page 42, the Book of Beginnings. Canto 3, the Yoga of the Soul's Release. A darkness carrying morning in its breast looked for the eternal wide returning gleam, waiting the advent of a larger ray and rescue of the lost herds of the sun. In a splendid extravagance of the waste of God, dropped carelessly in creation's spendthrift work, left in the chantiers of the bottomless world, and stolen by the robbers of the deep, the golden shekels of the eternal lie, hoarded from touch and view and thought's desire, locked in blind antres of the ignorant flood, lest men should find them and be even as gods. A vision lightened on the viewless heights, a wisdom illumined from the voiceless depths, a deeper interpretation greatened truth, a grand reversal of the night and day. All the world's values changed, heightening life's aim. A wiser word, a larger thought came in than what the slow labor of human mind can bring. A secret sense awoke that could perceive a presence and a greatness everywhere. The universe was not now this senseless whirl, borne round inert on an immense machine. It cast away its grandiose, lifeless front, a mechanism no more or work of chance, but a living movement of the body of God. Namaste. Jai Ma. Good to be with you. Much love to you. Stay bright. Be powerful. Be brave. Go forward. Grow. Much love. Namaste. Jai Ma.